So yes, we did talk about last week. If you would like to support it, please send a letter. That would be great. So the calendar turns to November on Monday, which only means one thing. Tax for LH is coming up. So Brian has an announcement.
So good news and bad news, as Robert says, yes, we are winding down the fundraiser this week, so you don't have to hear me next week and the week after that, so there's that to look forward to. Bad news is, as Jerry Reed said, we have a long way to go and a short time to get there. So we've got still the better half of our goal to still get reached. So we appreciate all the support thus far. Any more we can get is greatly appreciated. Social media pushes. It's bizarre how that helps in our current world, but it does every time we do something, post something, we get Gunther to post something. We see spikes, it's crazy. So anyway, we've also said, first off, there is a working QR code on all the flyers there at the tables. I swear to God, lab tested last night. As it points out there too, we are closing out the drive with a good old-fashioned spirit night, if that's what they still call them. It's at Shady's. I will not give the address, we all know where it is. It's Monday night volunteer to handle and cook dinner by taking everyone to Shady's. 10% of profits from all food and drink will go towards PACs. Just simply say, put on PACs. Well, don't, that might not work. But, so anyway, we appreciate it again, hard push and get what we can and we'll go from there, gents. And then we'll start thinking about having fun packing the stuff here in this hall in a couple of weeks. So any questions will be around, Mark Grail and I will be around and we'll go from there. Thanks for supporting.
After you donate, also mark your calendar, November 17th. I believe it's a Wednesday, is the actual pack. So it'll be up here. We actually pack the bags from the trailer and all that. So donate and then mark on your calendar the 17th. Also in the newsletter was the Lake Highlands High School Angel Tree. So if you're inclined to do so, sign up there. They are looking for some support as well. Let's see. There's one more now. Oh, Tuesday, November 2nd. All right. There's something going on. Mr. Threadgill, what's going on Tuesday, November 2nd?
We might have another election. I think that's going on now for 2 weeks with early voting. Once again, there's 8 amendments to the Constitution. Those will cost you money. So Mr. Crown will go through it and decide which one you're going to vote for. And how they go, you'll be in and out less than 20 seconds because I was up there the other day and nobody voted. So and vote early and vote off.
Yes, so please vote. If you haven't already done so, you have an opportunity in an election day as well. So next Friday, we've got a big program that Julie is going to speak about.
I gotta meet you guys. That's like one big plus. Next Friday, we have a big program that I want to talk to you about real quick. Next Friday, we have another Youth of the Month. We had one last week. You might remember that if you were there. Please be there next week. These community-facing meetings are some of our most impactful in our community because they're community-facing. But please be there. We're going to try to make it. We try to keep it light, try to keep it a little funny throughout the program. Make sure the kids feel honored and have a good time doing it. So I hope everybody can be out there next week. We're going to have to get more tables, but we'll see you there. Thank you.
Okay, anything else I'm missing this morning? All right, thrilled to have our representative, Mr. Turner, here this morning. With that, I'll turn over to Bill, and we'll get going.
Thank you. I thought we'd have the mic up the whole time with who all speaking, but Jenny had to make sure. Our speaker this morning is Club member, Representative John Turner. John was first elected to represent us here in the district formerly known as 114 in 2018. During his 2 terms in the House, John has authored and co-authored numerous bills, mainly around public education, public health, and public safety, especially around first responders. And of course, my personal favorite, HR 1384, which recognized last year's Lake Highlands football team, Coach Jordan. So, towards the end of, I believe it was the first session, but we've had 3, possibly 4 coming up sessions this session, John announced that he was not going to seek re-election. This was a bit of shock to me personally, but the desire to be home with his wife and kids is certainly an understandable one, especially with the way politics is right now. And the silver lining is we get to hear from my favorite type of political speaker, the person who can be completely honest with us on what all is going on. So with no further ado about the session that is and was John Turner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks for inviting me to be with you this morning. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's good to see all of you again. I feel like it's been too long. And I guess there's maybe some reasons for that, as I'll get into, reasons I haven't been able to be back here in Dallas nearly as much as I'd like. But finally, I'm here, and the session's over, and I really welcome this chance to talk to you all about it. Most of all, hear what you think about it. And I have prepared a little presentation here about some of the highlights and maybe lowlights, depending on your perspective, of this session. And then I want to leave some time just to talk about it, and certainly want to hear your reactions and your questions about it. But you know, I talk about, let's see if I can make this go forward. Well, I ought to be able to do that. Figured I'd do it this way.
Different brand.
Different brand.
Here comes the assistants.
I know I should have.
There's Minus up there. That's always how the tech guy is, right?
Moving right along.
Yeah. I don't know, y'all gotta do.
You know, we've had what I would describe as a 10-month legislative year. Usually, the regular session would be over at the end of May, and I get to come talk to you and other groups about what happened in around early June, but not this time. We ended up here until just a little over a week ago with a total of 4 different sessions, and we hope there's not going to be yet another one. I don't think there is. I think we are finally done for this legislative cycle. You know, I have served 2 terms now in the legislature, but I tell people I'm certainly going to describe it as having served for 5 sessions in the legislature. It just sounds a lot better. But the truth is, over this time period, this is kind of how I sum it up. The big picture is you've had just a mix of a whole lot of contentious issues, and frankly, a politics that's kind of, I think, driven both parties to some degree more to cater to their base and a little bit to the extremes. And that isn't always the case, but it has been the case much of the time. We came off a campaign year that was very hotly contested. You had the pandemic and all the stresses associated with it. We had the winter storm back in February. We and then got into the regular session, and there was a strong push on some major legislation on very hot button issues on abortion, on guns. I'll get to that. Also legislation related to culture type issues, transgender kids, legislation related to the border wall, election legislation, which was very, very contentious, of course, and drew a lot of momentum from the former President Trump's claim about election fraud. And that resulted in a Democratic walkout for over a month. I did not participate in that walkout in the Democratic warm break, but obviously it had a huge effect on the legislature. And you top it all off with having to draw new lines, redistricting. Well, that is a lot of ingredients in a recipe for a very contentious legislative session. And frankly, there's a lot of stress and strain in the legislature right now, as there is in politics generally. I think people are exhausted in the legislature, really need a reset and a rest, and I hope that happens. But nonetheless, there is substance to talk about. We did do things this session, passed thousands of bills, and of course I can only talk about some of the big ones in the time we have here, and that's what I will try to do. And I'm not intending to make this any kind of partisan presentation, but just for ease of organization, I'm going to go through first the bills that I will mention that I supported, and then I'll get to some that I did not, and just organize it that way. So to begin, we of course always have a state budget every year. That's the only thing the legislature is constitutionally obligated to pass each session, and we did pass it. $248 billion budget over the next 2-year cycle. And frankly, the budget was not especially controversial compared to a lot of things. One thing I always highlight is, did we preserve our existing funding levels for public education, K-12? And the answer is we did. No significant, no tax increases, no significant revenue changes. Really a pretty similar budget in most respects to what we've had in previous sessions. Of course, we could do a whole presentation on just the budget, but that's the big picture. And then we had, in this last special session, it finally came time for us to appropriate a whole lot of federal money that had been sent as aid to states by Congress for the pandemic and for economic recovery. And that was quite a bit of money, $16 billion. And we made decisions about how that would be used. That's also fairly non-controversial compared to a lot of things. One thing I'd point out, we're actually not spending all this money. We're holding over about $3 billion of that $16 billion into next session, which is okay. That's allowed under the federal legislation, and we'll be able to use it for other priorities then. And then, of course, we had the electrical grid, and it's kind of commonly said, well, we didn't really do anything to fix the grid. Well, the truth is we did pass some pretty significant legislation related to weatherizing our generation and transmission facilities. Senate Bill 3 in the regular session had those provisions. Now, they may not have been as strong as many would like. It's not a perfect bill. I would be the first to agree with that. I did vote for it. I did think it made progress toward weatherizing our grid and hopefully avoiding a repeat of what happened to us all last February. This work isn't going to be done yet this winter. So while there have been certain changes made and there are additional preparations being made at ERCOT and PUC, we certainly hope we don't have another episode like that this winter. But most of the work of this bill is going to kick in and be done in subsequent years. There were various other bills that passed related to this general subject, including banning the sale of the wholesale indexed electricity plans by electric retailers. And then most recently in this last session, one of the last bills we passed, I think this one was unanimous, is an increase in the Homestead exemption. And so for residential homeowners across Texas with Homestead, beginning once this is actually approved on the ballot. Now this won't be on this ballot we're all voting on now, of course. This will have to be in a subsequent ballot, probably in May. But the expectation is it'll be approved and the Homestead exemption will go up by $15,000 from $25,000 to $40,000 for your school district property taxes. So that'll be, I forget exactly the number. I imagine John or others in this room may remember exactly what that will mean to homeowners. Typically across Texas, something like $140 maybe of property tax relief in the form of that additional exemption. And the difference is in the loss of revenue to school districts will be made up by additional state revenue, so there'll be no impact on school districts once that's approved by voters. And then, several other significant bills during one or more of these special sessions that had bipartisan support. These are all bills that I voted for, and all to one degree or another had at least some people in both parties supporting them, some of them overwhelmingly. There was a new bill that will provide additional tuition revenue bonding authority for colleges and universities, which basically means another wave of big construction and new projects, building projects or renovation projects for our colleges and universities, and this is spread out all across the state, so basically everybody gets something. Maybe not everybody got all they wanted, but it's a pretty significant bill for construction on colleges and university campuses. And then we passed a bill that now, you've probably seen this, allows in Texas a college athlete to use his or her name, image, and likeness and profit and benefit from it. That is an interesting bill. I voted for it. Most people did vote for it. I'll be honest, I still had some concerns and reservations about how all this is going to work. I really think we need to feel our way through this, but I'll tell you, one way it was presented is, other states are doing this, and if Texas doesn't do it, we're gonna lose recruits in our own collegiate athletic programs here, and that probably was correct. Certainly that's the trend, and there's some, idea of, I guess, fairness in allowing the college athlete to share to some degree in I guess, the notoriety, success of that athlete by being able to benefit from his or her own name, image, and likeness. You can't do it in association with your school team or logo. It has to be just a person disconnected from the university in whatever, however the profit is being earned. But that's a significant bill I think we need to watch. HB 1925, there's now a statewide ban on camping on public property. This really arose to a large degree from the pretty significant camping issues that were happening in Austin especially, although we've also had those issues here in Dallas. This bill is actually not going to affect Dallas tremendously because Dallas already had a similar ordinance in place. However, it may affect the enforcement, and this is a bill I also did support. Most Democrats did not support it, but I felt after a lot of consultation, it was on the whole what was a good bill. And then we had another bill that provided another check to our retired teachers. Did that last session. We're able to do it again this session to recognize their efforts for our education system over the years. And then had a couple of bills that did not expand Medicaid in the way you normally hear that discussed, but did make some changes that will actually expand Medicaid coverage in some ways, including for new mothers for 6 months after childbirth, and also will allow children essentially not to be thrown off the Medicaid rolls in the way they sometimes had been before because they didn't fill out paperwork. So some modest steps, you might say, in the direction of expanding the coverage of Medicaid, although we're still not a state that has expanded coverage like I think 37 or 38 others at this point. Okay, I think that brings me into now the more controversial side of things. So the following bills are bills I did not vote for, but I'll describe them to you, and we can understand a little bit about what they've done. The big elections bill, of course, this was the one that prompted the quorum break by the most Democratic members. I was one of 4 Democratic members that did not participate in the quorum break. It wasn't because I liked the election. Thank you. I did not support this election bill. I did not think it was a good bill. I did not vote for it, but nonetheless, I did not agree personally with the strategy of breaking quorum. I respect the decisions of those who did, my colleagues who did, but I just didn't think that was the right approach for a variety of reasons. Like I said, I did not support the bill. I actually ended up on the conference committee between the House and the Senate on this bill when it finally, a version of it passed both the House and the Senate, but did not sign the conference committee report because I just didn't think it's good for elections and good for democracy on the whole. It has some provisions in it that I think are helpful, but many of the main features I didn't end up agreeing with. As you can see here, there's going to be an enhancement of power of poll watchers that I'm not sure is healthy. Some additional criminal offenses that I'm worried are going to entrap people who were just trying to participate in the democratic process, didn't really intend to be doing anything wrong, and I'm concerned about that. The mail-in voting process will change in various ways. Texas is now going to be one of only 2 states that's going to have a requirement of putting your social security number, or first your driver's license number or your social security number on the outside of your envelope, and then putting a seal over that when you mail it. That I'm concerned is going to cause some people to make mistakes and not have their votes counted. So there are various concerns that you probably read a lot about related to that elections bill, but it did pass. And then, of course, a very major piece of legislation in Texas is the Senate Bill 8, which is an unusual bill. It's the first of its kind in the country that allows any person to sue any other person who either provided or assisted, aided and abetted in providing an abortion after really approximately 6 weeks of pregnancy, which is described by its supporters as the time in which cardiac activity can be detected. And this is a bill that was really set up precisely to evade the normal kinds of court review that you have on abortion restrictions right now under Roe versus Wade, because it has no public enforcement component. It does not make it a crime to provide the abortion or assist in providing the abortion. There's no district attorney or public or attorney general, anybody like that involved in enforcing it. It's enforced by private citizen lawsuits. Some have described it as sort of a bounty hunter system, where literally anybody, anyone here, anybody in the world, other than a person who committed an assault against a pregnant woman, anybody else in the world can go into court and sue and try to get $10,000 over the abortion that has occurred. And this is an issue, I think I've talked about this issue before you previously, that abortion is an issue where I respect a whole diversity of opinions on that difficult subject, and what is morally correct, and what religious views exist about this subject, and also what our public policy should be. There are many people who are pro-life who nonetheless do not think this bill is a good idea, and I'm hearing some dialogue about that. However, it did pass. I think essentially along partisan lines in the legislature. There may have been one or two deviations. It's now under legal challenge, even though it's evading the normal kind of review. Nonetheless, people have filed lawsuits basically saying shouldn't be allowed to evade that kind of review, and it is being considered by the Supreme Court pretty soon. And I frankly don't know how this is going to end up. I could not venture to predict what the courts will do with this bill. I think it's possible that it stands up. That's going to be up to the Supreme Court. But it's also possible that the courts would essentially say, no, this can't be permitted. A district court previously said that it should not be, that this bill should be struck down in Austin, a federal district court. Then the Fifth Circuit essentially stayed and reversed that, and now the issue's up on appeal to the Supreme Court. And this is all at a preliminary stage of litigation, so there's probably multiple rulings, and the system will work for some period of time. I'll got to stay on track because I got quite a few left to mention. We passed some significant bills related to gun issues and permitless carry this last session. The most significant one abolished the requirement that we've had in law for a substantial period of time to have training and a permit in order to carry a handgun in Texas. So that no longer exists as of September 1st. And then, in the second special session, the border wall funding came through. Now, we had provided money for border security in the original regular session, about $1 billion, which is actually a pretty significant increase over what the state had been spending before, which had been about $800 million for several years. And then even that didn't exist several sessions ago. I mean, this is sort of a new thing for the state to be spending really much of any money on border security, which has traditionally been a federal responsibility. But then in the special session, House Bill 9 included an additional $1.8 billion, about something like $700 to $800 million of which is apparently going to be for wall or barrier construction. Now, I realize we have issues at the border. I believe in border security. I believe in a secure border. I did not support the bill to spend money, state money on the border wall. And then a few others I'll mention. Maybe you've heard about this one. This affects our cities, councilmen, and our counties. It will no longer be possible to reduce from year to year the amount of money spent on law enforcement agencies by a city or a county. This is a reaction to the defund the police movement. Here again, I'm trying to chart out a little bit of a middle position here. I never supported defunding the police or reducing funding the police. I always felt we need more funding for the police and for our first responders here in Dallas and in really most other cities, I'm sure, in Texas. Nonetheless, I did believe it should still be a local decision exactly how much you choose to spend. And frankly, if you can find some efficiency, then of course we're doing our taxpayers a favor if you can do that and maybe adjust from year to year what you spend. Furthermore, I don't want you to have an incentive to not increase the amount you spend maybe in a given year because of a spike in crime, realizing that you won't be able to go back down if that spike goes back down or if crime significantly goes down over time. But nonetheless, that bill passed. Now, interestingly, it does only apply to the biggest cities in Texas. I think about the 11 largest cities in Texas, our population bracketed here. All of the other small cities in Texas, this does not apply. So there were various amendments proposed to extend the application of this bill to those all went down. Again, I want to be clear about my support nonetheless for our first responders and for funding our police. I think it's just a question of local discretion, exactly what that amount might be. And then I'll just briefly summarize a few of these last ones here. Lots of cultural issues, of course, as you all know, these are very prominent right now in politics, and this certainly has been the case in the legislature recently. The bill passed in the regular session requires essentially that the national anthem be played before all sporting events. And again, I fully believe the national anthem should be played before all sporting events, and I revere the national anthem. I did not think it was furthering things, however, to pass a law requiring that be the case. To me, that actually perhaps cheapens it just a little bit to know that we're playing it not because we voluntarily want to and respect and love our country, but because it's now a law saying that you must. But nonetheless, that bill passed, and I don't think there will be any. I think all teams essentially were committed to doing that anyway. The Mavericks, for a brief time, did not do it, and then they changed. I think they would have continued doing it with or without this bill, and I think other sports teams would too. And then, we had a few last ones here, and I'm running short on time, so I'm going to kind of be selective. Let me just mention, of course, in this latest special session, there's a fairly controversial bill about what the rules should be for participation in UIL sports related to children that or students that identify as transgender or want to participate, a girl that wants to participate in boys sports. For one reason or another, and a bill passed basically saying that can't happen. And then you've heard some about, frankly, it's a tough time to be on school boards these days. You're dealing with all the COVID issues and the mask and the vaccine issues, but in addition, the critical race theory bill, House Bill 3979 and Senate Bill 3, has now created, I think, some new controversy in schools because it establishes teachers cannot teach certain controversial topics, or if they do, they have to do it in a balanced way. And the question is, what exactly does that mean? What is a controversial topic, and what is a balanced way? Do you have to give, in South Lake, they're debating now, do you have to give both sides of the Holocaust? Well, previously I think this was left to teachers to use their good judgment, but there's now a state law that's going to create some additional friction there. And because of time, and also I wouldn't dwell on this anyway, I was able to pass numerous bills that I was the primary author of, or the primary sponsor of, and many of these are issues we've worked on. Some of you all have been involved in. I appreciate the street racing bill. We've increased penalties for illegal street racing and allowed for forfeiture of vehicles involved in street racing. It was a second incident. Was able to work on some mental health issues for teenagers and adolescents, which I think are important and hopefully will be beneficial. And then, of course, we've been redistricted. Now, these links right here, if you're curious, if you want to take a photo and go to these links, this will show you the maps, and you can zoom in and see exactly where we are. The short of it is, here's the new Texas House map, and my district, 114, our district, used to be really in the north part above Northwest Highway, mostly where you see District 108. Now it's been shifted over to the east and really covers about half of Lake Highlands, Bailey. And really Lake Highlands is divided about three ways. It's between District 102, which is currently represented by Ana Maria Ramos, Democrat, now 108, which is Morgan Meyer, Republican, and now 114, the district I've been representing, which will now be open, and that will now be an open seat. And it's considered to be a pretty reliable Democratic seat, but as far as I understand, there's going to be a contested primary for the new District 114, which is mostly an East Dallas district, a lot of Lakewood, and then kind of getting down into the downtown area. So on the Senate side, Lake Highlands actually is mostly still in a single Senate district that is still District 16 with Nathan Johnson. That's really the one area where this neighborhood is not divided up a great deal, although it still is divided to some degree when you get down south Northwest Highway. And then on the congressional districts, once again, Lake Highlands really divided in half. It used to be that District 5, currently represented by Lance Gooden, came into this area quite a bit. It really does not come across anymore, across 635. You now have a division between 32, which is Democrat Colin Allred, and the District 24, which comes over from the Coppell area to Costco house. Just reaches out like a little fist here at the house. That's represented by Beth Van Dyke.
That one's crazy.
Redistricting, we can talk all day. Frankly, a lot of the issues in politics that I think make it a little frustrating and volatile right now have a lot to do with how these lines are drawn and who people are responding to. I'll just say, and I want to open this up for questions, but it has been a real pleasure to represent you. As Bill said, I'm not going to run again for another term. I've decided for family reasons I need to not do this again, campaign again, and serve once again this time. But it's been a real pleasure and honor to be able to serve you in Austin. I appreciate that opportunity. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm sorry to have taken this almost to the end, but I would really love to hear any questions or comments anyone has. Yes, sir.
Hey, John, thanks for your terms, and we appreciate that and appreciate your involvement with our club along the way. On the subject of this split maps and representation, and this may also go to people like Justin, I know Chris just left, but the idea that our district is cut into one or two or three ways, what's the practical ramifications from your viewpoint of, is that really problematic, or it's not that big a deal, or what's your reflection on that?
Well, I think, I guess it depends on your point of view. I tend to think that a cohesive neighborhood is best to try to keep them together. And I think, Lake Highlands is identifiable as a distinct area of Dallas, neighborhood of Dallas. And so precisely, for organizations like this to be able to kind of know who your representative is and who your congressman or woman is, I think is good on balance. Now, the truth is, all of these lines were drawn essentially for political reasons. Sure. And that really, I think, hate to be such a realist or be so stark about it, but I think that's really what has driven this. And so if you start to analyze the partisan performance of the different precincts here, that's and that's something that's been done by both sides. I don't think I'm really speaking just to one side or the other, but that's been the normal practice over the years. Not every line is that way. Not every district is that way. What really happened, by the way, here in terms of the House districts, at least, I can certainly speak more to that. With me retiring, my district is going to be one that many had different ideas what should be done with. I mean, it's harder to protect the district as an incumbent that you're not running in next time. Initially, there was a proposal to take 114 out and put it way over here and make it a new district in the far west part of the county. But for various reasons, most of the Dallas County delegation did not think that was a good idea in the end, and we were able to work together to get this different map. What I will say about it, I wanted my district, if possible, to be preserved as a district roughly in the same area of Dallas, and at least encompass some of the old district if possible, so there wouldn't be a feeling that we've just entirely lost that district for this area and had it replaced by others. But you can see Morgan Meyer, Representative Meyer's District 108. I imagine, many of you are going to live in his district now. Some of you are also going to be in 102, Anna Maria Ramos, and then some, I think, still in the new 114. So I don't know what you'll do if you'll invite 3 different representatives to come and talk and give you the updates next time, but that's what it will look like for Lake Highlands. Yes.
First, John, thanks for your support of first responders during your time in Austin. Everybody running for office says they support police and fire, but there's a laundry list of bills that Representative Turner authored and got passed that substantively support the police and fire that we support here at Exchange, so thank you for that. On the Homestead exemption for school districts, you talked about the state money that's going to come in and backfill so that will be cost neutral for the districts. Is that a one-time funding mechanism, or do we have to go back every 2 years and advocate for that money?
Well, it's going to have to be filled each year, each 2-year cycle by the state, and so it is a hit to the bottom line for the state. Really, basically what you're doing when you make that change is you are rebalancing to some degree the revenue for school districts between local property tax revenue and the state revenue. Since you're now decreasing the local property tax revenue to school districts, the state will have to fill it in, and it will have to keep on filling it in. The way that really is going to work, at least for the next session, you may remember I mentioned earlier we reserved some of the federal aid money for the next session. Reserved about $3 billion. That's going to be enough to fill that gap for the next session. And I think that's kind of the thinking there, to be honest, is to use that money to fill that gap in the next session. Now, what happens after that? you could end up potentially, depending on our economy and other things, with a bit of a budget hole that the state is going to have to fill somehow. But I don't think, once you make this change, you're probably not going backwards, because this is in the state constitution. So constitutional amendment, it's going to be very hard to ever have a constitutional amendment that people will approve saying we're going to decrease your homestead exemption. That's going to be a challenge. So this is most likely going to stay at $40,000 and not go back down to 25, but the state will have to find the money. And I just want to make sure everybody knows, by the way, it's been a real pleasure to work with Brad, who does a tremendous job down in Austin, working for first responders. And he, in the past, has testified for bills we've had and is known around the building as being top-notch, doing great work in Austin. So it's been a pleasure to work with you, Brad, and I appreciate your commitment and what you do. Yes?
So I know we're still kind of in COVID weirdness, but are we seeing statewide any sort of fallout from some of these social bills? You know, I know there was a big talk in Georgia and Virginia and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like there's been as much talk about what Texas has done. Is it just because everyone's focused on DC now, or is there stuff going on that we're just not aware of?
Well, and you know, one thing I haven't talked about in this presentation, thanks for the question, Bill, is items that did not pass, that were proposed but did not pass. So for instance, in this last special session, the Senate passed a bill to have a forensic audit of our 2020 election, which is what Trump has been pushing us to do. He wrote to state officials saying he wanted us to do that. That bill passed the Senate, but it did not pass the House. Another example is Governor Abbott put on the call for this last special session to pass a bill saying that no business could mandate a vaccine, mandate the COVID vaccine. And now he has said that by executive order right now, but that's being legally challenged. And there's a lot of questions about whether he has the legal authority to do that in an executive order that is justified by the urgency of the disaster of the pandemic itself. So there is a question about that. He was wanting us to pass in the legislature a bill to do that. That would have been very controversial. Again, even the Senate did not end up moving that bill, and the House did not either. It stalled in a committee. So I think there's some reasons why, you know, while there was a host of controversial items up here, what I would say, Bill, is that there were quite a few other items that did not actually end up passing that probably would have made this even more of a contentious session and a controversial one. And so at this point, we're seeing a little bit of the, now that everything's done, the dust is starting to settle, seeing a shift of attention maybe to DC. At least that's my thought. Yes, John?
On the handgun issue, want to let you know that personally I've had my license for 27 years. I've taken multiple training courses. What I want you to know is you can still go get trained and you can still get a license. It's going to take a little time and a little money. I want to encourage you, I don't think we're going to see people strapping on the blocks headed over to JJ's for lunch, hopefully. But it's a real good idea to take that training if that's something you're entertaining, not necessarily strapping on, get them carried in your car or whatever you're going to do. I've had multiple retraining courses, which used to be required, it's not anymore. Two things I want you to know. One, I've never failed to learn something new and important when I took those courses. And I've also never failed to be surprised that some people, they call themselves shooters. Like the guy 3 lanes over hitting my target. So I would encourage you, if you're going to be involved in that, you can still get the training and the license. You obviously don't have to have it, but I would encourage you to do so, okay?
Thank you for that. That's a good observation. Absolutely, you can. The training is still available. It's no longer required in order to carry the handgun, but it's still available. I've heard it. I think it is very useful. Many people report to me, and I believe it myself, that it is very useful training, and they say they've gotten something out of it. You know, one thing, if those of you who've done it probably know, it also educates you in the laws related to the use of a handgun and a firearm, and what's self-defense and castle doctrines, you know, those sorts of things, which are, I think, important for responsible gun owners. Well, I know I'm about it, past the limit, in fact. Well, it looks like there may not be any more questions. So thank you all once again for this opportunity.
Exchange Club, thank you, John, for your service, willingness to be down there and as well, just your commitment to the club and being here. So, like you said, who knows what happens next? We have 3 speakers. Unfortunately, Carlin's not here, so, yeah, that's his problem, I guess, so. But no, I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Alex, thanks for being here. Welcome anytime. I'm sure Michael will, yeah, we have a drawing. I don't know if you heard about those. We have a drawing for a TV, or 2 TVs, 65-inch TV. If you'd like to enter such drawing, go see Rick. He'll tell you how to do so. Yes, sir.
Can I throw something in on that? I think everyone probably knows, if we don't buy enough tickets, this just comes back out of the Oktoberfest proceeds. So even if you don't need a TV, win it and donate it to the charity of your choice or do something with it. But let's not back it out of what we did a few Saturdays ago. Just buy yourself and someone you know a ticket, and let's get this wrapped up so we don't back it out of the...
Yeah, and when we announce the Oktoberfest numbers, we'll do the drawing, the same meeting, whenever that is.
Next week.
Next week.
Next week, so be back next week for the youth. It better be quick. I'm gonna start early next week. All right, drawing packs, please jump out there and support. It's a great cause, does great things in our community. So please support that if you can. Go to Shady's, and then also show back up here on Wednesday, the 17th, to assemble packs. They will need volunteers for that. So, seeing no more announcements, have a great Friday and a great weekend. We're adjourned.
The singing is on again, off again.
Yeah.